The Citizen Barrett Award this year goes to an amazing lawyer, and anyone who's tried to make change in the South, and really in most parts of the country, but particularly in the South, knows you need a good lawyer. And Penda is certainly a good lawyer. She was the former head of the NAACP Legal Defense Fund's Washington office, and when the efforts to roll back voting rights, which came about when the Voting Rights Act, Section 5, was repealed in 2013, and the first battle to roll back voting rights took place in North Carolina. And thank goodness for our country, for the state of North Carolina, Penda was there. And she rolled back, her and her legal team did amazing work and rolled that back. But I don't think I can do justice to introducing this remarkable lady, and we've asked her partner in social justice in North Carolina, the president of the North Carolina NAACP, the founder of Moral Mondays, the Reverend William Barber, to make the introduction of Penda.
Penda, a sister warrior, a general. Penda, who came into North Carolina when we were facing an onslaught of voter suppression, where the legislature had committed to spend millions of dollars of our own money taking on us and pushing policies that would represent the worst voter suppression tactics we've seen since Jim Crow. And Penda didn't flinch. She never thought about quitting. She never thought about giving up. She never thought about compromising. She wanted to know what the movement wanted to do. She understood history. She understood what was at stake, and she understood that there comes a time that you have to take a stand, and you have to draw a line in the sand. Penda went out and recruited some of the best lawyers. Many of them came pro bono like she did in so many ways. And she fought. She organized a powerful team, a diverse team. They did their work. They lifted up the Constitution. They used it to examine these voter suppression laws. And when all was said and done, the Fourth Circuit ruled unanimously that the voter suppression laws in all of its forms was unconstitutional. Penda, we are forever in your debt. I count it a privilege to have been in your midst, to have listened to your wise counsel, but most of all, to call you my sister. I think about in the Bible, there was a lady by the name of Deborah. And Deborah was a judge in Israel. She was one who was versed in the law. She was one that would never back up, and she stood for righteousness when Israel was in trouble. You are modern day Deborah, Penda, and we thank you so much. And those who decided to give you this award, you couldn't have picked anybody better than attorney Penda, Esquire. Love you, my sister. Thank you, and God bless.
I am delighted to accept this award that honors George Barrett for his decades of fighting for racial and economic justice in the South. And it is extra special because he was a beloved cooperating attorney with the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, where I served 15 years. So thank you so much to the Hillman Foundation. I believe in the power of the ballot. Dr. King preached, "Give us the ballot and we will give you representatives of goodwill." The goal is simple, power, through electing a majority of the representatives. But the dream is profound, even revolutionary. Legislatures that serve the public good rather than the interests of the privileged. Frederick Douglass told us power concedes nothing without a demand. The demand for voting rights has been made in the blood of Medgar Evers, crushed skulls on the Edmund Pettus Bridge, and in thousands of lawsuits filed by courageous plaintiffs, such as Reverend Barber. Today, we struggle against restrictions on voter registration, manipulation of voting locations and times, cuts to early voting, proof of citizenship requirements, onerous photo IDs, and more. But these are just the modern-day versions of literacy tests and poll taxes. Today's activists are determined to continue making the demand and forcing power to concede. My belief in the power of the ballot is sustained by so many people with whom I am blessed to work and who welcome me to struggle by their side. Many of these people are in this room tonight, and a couple of them are not here, but I'd like to give you a glimpse of the work of Reverend Barber and another client, Rosanelle Eaton. On April 29, 2013, as a legal observer, I watched from the balcony of the North Carolina Capitol as one by one, 17 unresisting demonstrators were handcuffed by guards as they were singing and praying. Reverend Barber, state president of the North Carolina NAACP, was the first arrested. He escalated the demand that he had been making for the governor and legislators to act in the public interest after, in their first 100 days, they rejected Medicaid expansion, slashed unemployment benefits, raised taxes on the poor, and proposed a pernicious voter ID bill. A few hundred demonstrated at the Capitol on that first Moral Monday, but it was a thundering call for those who dream of legislators of goodwill. The next Monday, 30 arrived to volunteer for peaceful civil disobedience, and the next after that, 57, and then the next Moral Monday after that, 151. By the end of the summer, over 1,000 people cumulatively have been arrested for peaceful protest, and more than 100,000 people have participated in a Moral Monday demonstration. Reverend Barber mentioned the voter suppression bill. It was rammed through that session right at the end, and it included an onerous photo ID requirement. It eliminated same-day registration. It cut early voting, and even more. When the movement went to court to challenge this monster law, it was led by Reverend Barber and by Mrs. Rosanelle Eaton, a 92-year-old kick-ass voting activist who had been arrested at the Moral Monday, had come and been arrested at the Moral Monday that focused on voting rights. Every day that we were in court over the 3 years of the hearings and trials, Mrs. Eaton and other matriarchs of the movement were there as well, sitting all day on hard benches in a cold courtroom. During breaks, Mrs. Eaton would put her hand on my arm, telling me that I had done well, or sometimes that I needed to speak more loudly so the people in the back could hear me. Last July, the Court of Appeals found that this law was enacted with racial intent, that it targeted African American voters with surgical precision. I'm sorry to report that the state is now trying to get the Supreme Court to reverse that, but if the court does take the case, the movement will take that fight to the court. Researchers have given the moral movement credit for ouster of regressive Governor McCrory in North Carolina. And Reverend Barber's speech at the DNC shows the power of a moral message. Today, the movement is spreading to other states. Still, as many others have so powerfully demonstrated here tonight, white supremacy has not yet conceded. A white supremacist sits in the White House and holds the helm at the Department of Justice. There's a resurgence of white supremacist activism. In my view, we must confront white supremacy with even more urgency, confronting it directly and doing so in the South. The South is where the race question is called, and the South is where the soul of America can be redeemed. That is why Forward Justice is dedicated to changing the South and thus changing the nation. But in 2017, can we still believe in King's revolutionary vision of securing the ballot and electing officials who legislate for the public good? We've heard optimists and pessimists here tonight, and I still have hope. The Dreamers, the Obama Coalition, Black Lives Matter, Raise Up for 15, Forward Together, Moral Monday, and other movements show the potential for us all to come together, as Addie talked about, in a fusion movement. And I believe that attacks on voting rights, as well as creation of anti-democratic districts, don't show that the regressives are winning. It shows they're running scared. Rosanelle Eaton, at age 21, traveled by mule to her county seat, was made to stand against the wall and recite the preamble of the Constitution to register to vote. In her 90s, she traveled to Moral Monday to engage in civil disobedience. She leads a lawsuit, and she encourages her lawyers in the courtroom. In a letter to the editor, the President of the United States said about Mrs. Eaton, Rosanelle is now 94 years old. She's still marching. She's still fighting. She still believes that we, the people, have the awesome power to make our union more perfect. I'm with her. I am so blessed to be able to join with leaders like Reverend Barber and Mrs. Eaton in the sacred work of fighting for the soul of American democracy. Thank you.